All right, how are you doing today?
Well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful, and I appreciate you at least being able to make yourself and give us time to talk about trauma. And I
Or
know you're an educator, Williams, and please, I'd love to introduce you to those watching because I've been knowing you for a while, but can you kind of give us a little bit of background about yourself?
of course, I've been with Los Angeles Unified School District for now 19 years. We'll be hitting my 20th year at the end of December. I've been in the classroom as a secondary math instructor, primarily focusing on intervention with the ninth grade students. Then I taught engineering with a school that I moved over to as a pilot school where I did engineering and math and became a dean for about 2 years. I delved in administration with continuation students for about 2 years as well. And now I'm an instructional math coach for a middle school in South Central Los Angeles.
Wow, you have a breadth of experience, really.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm trying to get myself in various roles that I could help support students, especially more in the inner city, that they need more of the support for math instruction in general.
Well, that's awesome that you do that. And you kind of hit on it a little bit when you talked about providing interventions. Today we want to talk about trauma and how it impacts us all, but also how do you see schools engaging in resilience? But let's start talking about trauma. With working with students in the different areas that you have, what kind of trauma have you experienced with students? Not giving out any names, of course, or anything like that, but just kind of sharing any experiences that you have personally been involved with.
Um, One of my current experience is with a young man at my school site. As soon as I met him, he gravitated towards me and just pointed out, it's like, you're going to be my dad. And I'm like, I went along with the flow, not knowing who the young man was, not knowing any of the history. And as I began to know him a little bit better, I found out some of his background story. And I was compelled to work with this young man. And one of the things that made it difficult was that he would have meltdowns on the weekends because him knowing that he wasn't coming to school for the weekend or long extended periods. So as I began to form this relationship of a father, child, friend, mentor, I got to know him a little bit better. And that trauma that this child has experienced is pretty much about 80% of the student population that we work with is not knowing where they're going to go home and sleep,
Hmm.
not being able to find a place to sleep or study. And he has been bounced around along with the family from shelter to shelter, from family home to family home, trying to find a place for them to live in. And along with that trauma, I'm seeing his resilience because as he's in the classroom, he's hitting
Mhm.
those books. It takes him longer.
Wow.
It takes him probably maybe a day and a half to catch up on the work that he's doing because once he goes home, he's not thinking about school.
Right.
He's thinking about survival mode. But once he's at
Survival.
school, he's
Wow.
focused on the academics. He needs guidance. He needs whenever he gets in trouble, the first person he calls is me, not the principal, not the counselor, it's me. So I go to his classroom, I walk him out, allow him to vent, cool down, and ask him, "Are you ready to go back?" And then he goes back and he's able to focus. So,
Well, but
like,
you've developed a relationship with him. You know, the reason he's reaching out to you, and I think that's one of the things that as we are re-engaging school differently, school is not going to be the same as it was. It definitely has a different platform, but it's still school. I think it's probably even more incredibly important to develop a relationship now. We're going from 3D to 2D. Um, how do you suggest we do that, and how can we do that in an online space?
um, calling, making those unexpected phone calls, not just giving the parents an update of what the child has not been able to do, but give them that call. How are you? The check
Right.
in.
Right, right. I know. I would love that call. We're all parents are afraid of the phone call from the school. I mean, I'll tell you, right? We don't care what it is, who you are. We're like, what happened?
Exactly.
But how often does that happen? I mean, do you actually do the unexpected phone calls and what do you say?
I have in the past in the classroom, and it was at odd hours. So as I was driving home or after I had dinner, just because I know as a parent, I was busy with a set schedule once I got home. So I wanted to catch them at different times. And it was asking them, this is Mr. Olmedo, I'm your son or daughter's math teacher. Wanted to know how everything was going. And the first thing that parents would normally ask, how's my child doing in the classroom? How are they behaving? Now we change our conversation to, I'm just calling just to touch bases with you. And do you mind if I continue these conversations throughout the year? And it took some time
Right,
because, like you just mentioned, they wanted a status report on
right.
the behavior and academics of the child. So I needed to switch their mentality of thinking that me calling was just to get to know how they were doing, the adult, and also, the child, how
Right.
they're doing at home.
Well,
So
that's a change of a mindset, quite frankly, that you're trying to develop because most of our mindset is fixed on there is a problem. What is the problem? And how do we fix it? But what you're really talking about is what I love to talk about all the time, which is community empowerment. And you begin to develop this relationship of how do you feel the importance around community um, will play out now with schools and how they will, continue to grow.
I think that community involvement has to be more present right now just because of everything that's happening. The loss of jobs for a lot of our families, the loss of potential resources for the families because either the families can't go out to seek them or the resources have shut down, especially in the communities that I work where the resource might have been very sparse. Now they have to travel further distances to get those resources. So coming together. Like the quote says, it takes a village to raise a child. I think this is more true now
Than
because of
ever before.
the
Right.
social distancing, the pandemic, and us being
Yeah.
aware of that as well, being mindful
Right.
that we need to take care of ourselves,
Hmm.
we need to take care of children, and how do we do that and everyone staying safe?
You know, Thank you for mentioning that too, because, social distancing and distance learning, everything is at a distance now, and which might be an opportunity to figure out how, and I'm still wrestling with that, how do we start developing a closer knit community in a distant world? And with schools being closed, or, brick and mortar schools, do you see the opportunity for community partnerships still being able to flow to help support schools?
I could see it. I could see, like for instance, mental health being able to provide some sort of whether it's Zoom meetings or information that will help the parents tap into resources. Maybe food banks as well coming in and being able to provide resources where the parents could reach out if they don't have that information. Even the news media outlet, I've been hearing status reports about COVID from almost every single radio station, which is great because usually they don't provide those news outlets. And also maybe centralized news information regarding certain communities that might not have the opportunity to connect with mainstream media,
Right.
letting something that will help them understand that the resources are available and they're closer to them as a possibility.
Thank you for sharing that. And, just like we just got through talking about the external community, how is your internal community dealing with this new online learning and distance learning and being able to chart new waters, meaning your colleagues? What's happening? What's happening inside the four walls of the school for those of us who want to know?
So one of the interesting pieces is that my younger teachers have been able to step up and use their social media advocacy and platform to reach out. And because they stepped up, uh, some of our veteran teachers saw that and they felt I'm able to do it as well. They were comfortable.
Right.
And the other part that I loved about what our particular teachers did is they also invited some of the educators that were a little bit more reluctant to use the technology, not because they didn't want to, because they were afraid of it
Oh,
and not knowing how to do it. So they invited them in. They allowed themselves to be vulnerable to this particular group of teachers. And because of that vulnerability, my seasoned veteran teachers that were reluctant also stepped up to the plate. And
Really?
collaboration was amazing because they brought in their nuggets of wisdom,
Yeah.
what they're putting curriculum together and what needed to be taught first, second, third.
So they're starting to work together?
The collaboration
Wow.
was amazing. And
More than before, like in that space, really?
more than
That's
before,
interesting.
cross-curricular.
Yeah.
Math started planning with English, social studies, and science because they wanted to put a more project-based learning spin to some
Yeah.
of the projects because
Hmm.
it lends itself, instead of them teaching in true silos, right, which usually classrooms become silos, they
Right?
start teaching
Yeah.
cross
Close the door. I do my own thing.
digital. So I'm looking forward to this year and more of that coming to the surface in terms of project-based learning, and not just students learning, here's math, here's English, here's social studies, here's a project, here's your lessons that will tie it in, and this is how you're going to apply it in science, PE, and the electives.
Wow. Most of us are seeing it from, the glass is half full, but you're seeing a silver lining around what's happening. So you're basically saying you're very optimistic then around what's going to happen with schools.
I am. And I think not just my school site, but others probably started doing the same thing.
Hmm.
And we need an outlet for everyone to start seeing what public school is doing, because usually we get the negative part.
Right.
It's not happening. And there are a lot of wonderful things occurring from the elementary school, because I could speak to what both of my daughter's teachers have done to being able to reach them through distance learning. High school, I have a couple of friends that are teaching high school, but I really didn't get to see it. But I'm just hearing through their stories what they did, and it mimics what we're doing at my
Right.
school.
Well, with it, we know that teachers also get trauma too, right? They experience secondary trauma, vicarious trauma. They take it home as well. How do you see them coming back and bouncing back and developing resilience? How can we do that with our adults in
Mm.
education?
So with what we did for the 3 months that we were shut down, we have a social worker, attendance people service. We had a restorative justice teacher, 3 academic counselors. They also started touching bases with our educators and just uh, um, asking them, come and join the Zoom. We're going to be talking about X, Y, and Z.
Mm.
I started also sending them text messages every other 2 weeks. How are you?
Wow.
And just continue with conversations.
Yeah.
And one of our educators planned I don't want to say a happy hour, but we were meeting every single Friday
Hey,
at,
nothing's wrong with happy hour.
true, there's nothing wrong with that. But we were meeting at 6 p.m. virtually, and different individuals were coming in. They were having
Wow.
time, just talking in general. And it felt very relaxed that
Mm.
the following week, when that was occurring, you could see that energy level being
Right.
different because we were able to be ourselves and just hang out virtually, that
Right.
allowed the distance to continue. So I'm hoping that we embed those check-ins for us, the adults, as well, where we could just sit, talk, and
Yeah.
enjoy each other's company virtually.
Well, I think that's important just to be able to talk. And oftentimes that's something we don't have time to do. And
Correct.
so finally, do you plan on doing similar things with your students to help them as well?
Yeah, I know the district right now has it's called the Smart Start, where they want us to take at least the first week or so to help the teachers, the parents, and the students get acclimated with the new program without any jeopardy to instruction. So
Hmm.
that sounds like a very great plan because it's going to take little baby steps. We have
Yeah.
incoming sixth graders that will need to learn the expectations of middle school along with the learning platforms, and then help reinforce it to the seventh graders, to the eighth graders, and possibly new students coming into our district from
Hmm.
other districts or even charter schools.
Yeah.
And this would be a great idea to get everyone grounded with the work that we need to do through distance learning, the platforms, the expectations, who
Hmm.
do we have for support, in case anything happens, especially the parents not knowing the school
Yeah,
and not being able to see us by
yeah,
face other than virtually. So
right.
this is a great idea to get to know everyone and get to see parents' faces as well. So like that, we get to know them and understand their needs and their wants.
So do you think some online training in trauma is helpful or could be helpful to those that you don't talk to all the time, but maybe can help them self-reflect or learn resilience within themselves?
I do agree that this has to be embedded. It's not just something we talk about. It should be embedded into the instruction, into the children's practices, into the adults' practices, because, like you mentioned, we're all experiencing trauma at different levels,
Yeah,
and how we deal with it. Our outlets is also very essential for us to deal with it. Talking to individuals, setting up our network systems. If I'm experiencing this, who do I get to call? So they could be able to help me, right? And having a second, third point of contact, so we could be able to, as adults, facilitate. Because if we're experiencing trauma, we can't let that trickle down into the classroom, into the children, because they're already experiencing their trauma, and
right.
they get to see us. It's gonna be like, what's going on?
Wow. Well, you just gave me a great insight, and all of us who are watching, an insight to some of the challenges that are happening within schools. But you also gave us some optimism that we can actually jump over those hurdles, learn how to have conversations and dialogue, and really lower the anxiety level that all of us are feeling. So I really wish you a wonderful new school year. I know you'll be treading some uncharted waters, but I just feel like you guys are going to sail on pretty well. So thank you again, Williams, and we look forward to maybe talking to you again, maybe mid-year, and seeing how things are going. Do you
Of
think that
course, I
we
would
can do
love,
that?
of course, I will be willing to follow up with another conversation as things change as well, right? We don't know what's going to happen, but I would love another chat.
I would too. And I thank you again. I really, really appreciate it. And continue the great work that you're doing. Know that we are standing behind you. We know it will be difficult. It certainly will have its challenges, but we just know that educators are at the heart of this work and that you're essential workers, and we appreciate it deeply. I'm sure I speak for many people.
Thank you so much for the time and for having me.
Thank you. Bye bye.